What's up, my brothers and sisters? Welcome to the Fireground Fitness Podcast, where we talk about all things pertaining to life on and off the fireground. The views and the opinions expressed are those of your host and our guest. Today we sit down with Dr. Chief Kane Nixon, and we talk about his titles, and we talk about how important education is. We talk about leadership, all these things, and so much more. Please enjoy. Kane Nixon, welcome to the Fireground Fitness Podcast. I'm excited to sit down with you in your beautiful home up here in the way Northwest Valley in Peoria. And I want to talk to you about some of the stuff that you're doing with speaking and leadership stuff that you're doing. But before we dive into that, let's talk about you a little bit. Who is Kane Nixon, and where do you come from?
Yeah. So thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be on here and get to talk with you. So who am I? So
I didn't mean to start with such a deep existential question.
Yeah, I've got to really go way back. Let's go back. I was born in Nebraska, moved to Colorado when I was about 5, and I was raised there. Then I moved to Arizona.
What part of Colorado?
So I grew up in Loveland, Colorado, just south of Fort Collins.
Okay.
About an hour north of Denver. It was a really good city to come up in.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
I love me
small town.
I love me some Colorado.
Yeah, it was, 4 seasons. It was a good place to grow up. I was raised by a single mom. We didn't have much when I was growing up. My mom had me when she was 20. So we kind of grew up together, and she showed me what hard work was and how to really push yourself and be successful. So, she's working multiple jobs, dealing with me, of course. And then, which,
her hardest job.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But, taking night classes, she ended up getting, her associate's degree, bachelor's degree in political science. And then she went on to get an MBA. So she definitely showed me what hard work is and how to be successful. So a lot of people ask where I get my work ethic from, and it's no doubt from, watching my mom do what she did. So, like I said, grew up in Colorado, and I started in the fire service when I was 16, as a student firefighter. It's, like a high school volunteer program that they had there that was just kicking off. And so I got to, train with the firefighters, run calls. We didn't do interior firefighting, but we were pretty active in that world. So it was really good early exposure for me. That wasn't my plan the whole time, right?
What kind of stuff would they have you doing? Like out throwing ladders and
so
salvage
doing a lot
tarps
of
and stuff like that?
Yeah, doing a lot of training, learning the job. And then when calls would come, we were an extra set of hands and able to do things on calls. So the program has really evolved since I was there. But it was a good first glimpse at the fire service. So
yeah,
I was actually testing for fire departments my senior year of high school to get on, and I did, and I got hired in Vail right after I graduated high school. So I worked in Vail, Colorado as a resident firefighter, so I lived in the fire station.
Oh wow, 24/7.
Yeah. So some people go to college. I went to the academy and then lived in a firehouse. So it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. But one of the things I quickly realized is that firefighting in the snow in the mountains is not for me. So I wanted to. So I went from 20 below to 120, and I came to Arizona.
Yeah. Okay. So, before you move off of that, though, because I have no experience with weather like that. So what are some of the things, what are the little things that you'd have to do that you wouldn't think of here in the Valley?
Yeah. So it's funny because when I came to Arizona, I was driving down the street and I kept seeing all these blue little reflectors in the road, and I was like, what are these? What is this? And somebody told me it's a hydrant marker, and I didn't, this was right when I moved here. I was
right.
like, oh,
and now you can't not really see them, right?
Smart.
You're like, oh,
yeah.
hydrant.
Yeah. But you couldn't have that in Colorado. The snowplows would just
tear them right off the road.
Tear them up. So we actually, in Vail, we had these, they were about 10-foot high poles on a spring with an orange flag, and that was our hydrant marker, because when the snowplows would come down the road, they'd create snow berms and it would bury our hydrants. So we would actually, up on top of the hose bed, we had a metal coal shovel and a hydrant bag, a big canvas bag with our couplings. And yeah, there's a couple other things that I'll tell you that were in the bag for a reason. So you jump off, drop your bag, and you start digging. You start going after the snow berm to get to your plug.
Wow. Yeah.
And then a few other things in the hydrant bag were a pretty substantial rubber mallet, and some fusees, some road flares. So once you get your plug exposed,
now you
put your wrench on the cap, and then strike your fusees and start thawing out the metal on the hydrant. And then you put the mallet, you start going to town on the hydrant wrench to pop the cap off the steamer.
Nice.
So then, you make your connection and do your best to not break the hydrant stem because it's cold. Everything's below the frost line. So they're all dry hydrants. But some other things that we had to do were, we wouldn't have water in our pumpers for a few months at a time, just because. Oh yeah,
you keep it. Otherwise, you'd freeze the seals.
Right. So a lot of the times, your first 5 minutes on a fire, you're waiting on that hydrant water. Just a different world, different tactics, definitely different construction and terrain. And so when I started to look around, like, where do I want to be a career firefighter? Is it Colorado? Is it where? The Phoenix Valley and everything that the automatic aid system offers. It was just very clear for the progressive training, the focus on safety, everything that Brunacini had accomplished with Phoenix Fire, and then the automatic aid system, coming together. I just knew that's where I need to be. Yeah. So in 2006, I packed up and came down here.
Yeah. Did you come down here with a job in hand, or?
No. So I was 21. So
no advance
whatever. Yeah, just pack the U-Haul and come on down. So a buddy of mine, his dad lived here, and so he said he owned a construction company, so I at least had income doing small tasks and jobs there.
Some labor.
Yeah,
he's like, come on down.
Yeah, and
strong back.
Right. Yeah, for a period of time.
Yeah, right.
And so there was no reciprocity. I had to transfer all my certs over and go through that process. But EMT, and in Colorado, you're a firefighter 1, and then you have to have a specific amount of time on to become a firefighter 2.
Right.
And here in Arizona, we do the firefighter 1 and 2.
Right.
So I jumped into that 1 and 2 academy with Glendale Community College, and the rest is history. I met a couple of folks in that academy that got me hooked up with Sun City West Fire Department, Fire District, which is where I started.
Yeah. So it's funny. So my alma mater is Sun City West, and I started there in '98. Worked there till early 2002. Yeah. And so it's funny because I remember hearing, I kept my finger on the pulse, and all of a sudden I'm like, I saw your name pop up somewhere. I'm like, who's that guy? Yeah. Showed up well after a little bit after I left. That's kind of funny. Small world.
Yeah. That was in 2006.
Yeah.
So, and it's been a ride ever since. It's a great department, great people. I'm really happy that I landed there.
Yeah.
It's good.
So, clearly, I don't know if I said this already, but I said chief, you're deputy chief at this point. Yep. And so you went through the wickets on the way up the pipeline. What were some of the positions you held? Did you?
Yeah, so I started in Sun City West on the ambulance. While I was in the 1 and 2 academy,
Oh, okay.
A couple of my peers, they were like, hey, we're testing for EMTs. And for me, I was like, well, I'm doing construction in monsoon season of Phoenix, or I could, maybe potentially become an EMT on an ambulance. I'll go that route.
Yeah. I think 1,000 ways better to spend my time.
Yeah. It was a culture shock. And not just, culture shock, but just the weather was, I moved here July 1st of 2006.
Yeah. I threw a hammer the first summer that I was here when I got out of the Marine Corps. And I was tough as nails when I was 24 years old.
Sure.
But that first summer, I was like, this is brutal.
I had never experienced anything like that.
Yeah, it was brutal, man.
So it was...
so you got out.
Yeah. So I got hired with Sun City West EMS in November, right before the 1 and 2 finished. And then I was testing with, multiple fire departments throughout that time. And that spring... Sun City West was one of the departments that I was testing with for firefighter, and they called. So
right on.
So then after that, went from an EMT on an ambulance to a BLS firefighter to an ALS firefighter, acting engineer. I never got promoted to engineer. Funny story about that is I tested twice and got third place on both lists, and that really bothered me, just because it. I should have performed better. There were things that I could have done better, and so it was a great learning experience for me. Yeah. I got plenty of seat time, driving and pumping, so that was good.
I was an engineer for 4.5 years. I really value that experience, right? In whether you're made or not, but just being in that front left seat. That's a very interesting and very illuminating perspective.
Absolutely. You see the call from a different perspective, going from just the back seat to front seat, but getting drive time is a big deal, because you're almost the liaison between the company officer and the back seat.
Sure.
And you see things from a different perspective. You need to understand the needs of the back seat, but you need to be able to facilitate your company officer's, requests and be ready to act when he or she needs you to act. So I really enjoyed that place. A lot of people say, that's the best job in the department.
It is definitely a good
engineer,
job.
Yeah.
Although I will say this, at 3 a.m, when the whole entire crew is asleep on the rig and you're driving back from a call, I'm like, this is bullshit.
Yeah. Right.
It's quiet. Everyone's in there snoring, and I'm trying to, trying to driving back by myself.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So
but I used to think of myself as the XO.
Okay.
Right? Because when the captain was out, if they had to leave or something happened or whatever, it's your rig, it's your crew.
Yeah.
At least that's how I looked at it.
Absolutely.
And I took that responsibility seriously.
There is a lot of responsibility there, and you do need to take it serious. Which again is I think it's a great transitional rank, whether you want to have your whole career there, or if on your way to company officer, you just learn a different side of the organization, but really the responsibilities of the crew and what's going on. So, I'm glad that I did it and got those reps.
Yeah.
And then I was promoted to captain. I don't know what year, but let's see, that would have been probably 2012, I think. So after that, I was a captain for about 5 years, I think, and maybe 6. And then I promoted to division chief. And during that time as a captain, I, did a lot of things for the organization and a lot of things in the region. And then I became a battalion safety officer, which, the FIT, driving the chief around. And that lasted for me driving was about 3 months before the chief. I showed up one day and my turnouts were on the other side of the truck. And so, which was fantastic. I got to work with some
Is that because you didn't like the way you drive?
That might have been it. Yeah. Too slow, probably.
So, all along this journey, in the beginning of the podcast, I called you doctor.
Yeah.
Right? You've got your Ed.D. And so I'm assuming all along this while you're going to school. And
yes.
What prompted you to do that? Because I know a lot of folks come into the fire service like, this is good. I'm a firefighter now, and I don't need to go do anything else. And so what prompted you to go to school?
Yeah. So great question. The requirements at my fire district, we're at Fire Authority, we have to have an associate's degree at a minimum to test for captain. So as I was going through, paramedic school as a firefighter and then getting all my qualifications to drive, you're amassing and accumulating these college credits. And so I was able to get a degree in paramedicine and associates, and then also a degree in fire science. And because I knew I wanted to be a company officer, and that was just happening. And then it was in about 2012, I really started to have some pretty serious back problems, herniated discs. And I did everything from, rehab to injections, soft tissue, everything that I could do. Physical therapy, nothing was quite cutting it. So it just got to the point where very clearly I had to have surgery. So they did a dual laminectomy where they go in and take the herniated portions of the discs out at L4, L5, and L5S1. And 3 days before my operation, I'm in the pre-op consult with the surgeon, and he's going through my chart, and he's like, "Oh, you're a firefighter." And he keeps flipping through, and I'm like,
"Is that going to be a problem?"
Time out. Yeah. Can we go back to that question? And also, is this the first time you've seen my chart? So
right. Why are you so surprised? What's happening right
now? But he said, this is a pretty significant injury at multiple levels for someone your age. I was 28 at the time. And I said, okay. And he's like, "I'm confident, you're young, you're fit. We'll get you back on the truck. But, are you the guy that does all the hard work?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." And I'm trying to become a captain at the same time, getting ready for the test. And, he's like, "So is there any way you can just get out of that role and promote?" And I'm like, "Well, it doesn't really work like that. I can't
it's not so easy."
Don't just walk into the chief's office and go, "I'm ready." So I said, "Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm going to try to, promote to company officer." And he's like, "Yeah, you need to. And do you have a college education?" And my response was, "I've got 2 associate's degrees. Next questions, doctor." And, so he's like, "Well, no, do you have a 4-year degree?"
He's like, a real degree.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of how it felt that he was saying. Right? And so I said, "No, I don't." He's like, "You need to go back to school because there is a chance this doesn't go well for you. You're going to have another option." So I disagreed strongly.
At what point are you feeling the little career dissipation light in the corner of your eye, a little bit of panic setting in?
Right there. Yeah. Okay. And really, I live on the west side of the valley, and this appointment was on the east side, so it was about an hour drive home. And at home I've got a wife, I've got a 6-month-old, I got a 6-year-old at the time. Yeah. And this is what I know, right? Like I told you before, I've been doing this since I was 16, and very passionate about it. The fire family is a real thing to me. Yeah. Like I said, I was an only child raised by a single mom. The fire department, these are my big brothers, big sisters, uncles, aunts, right? This is my family. Yeah. And especially coming from Colorado to Arizona, these people, they mean a lot to me. So just to have a surgeon say, "Hey, yeah, this might not work. Consider something else." It was kind of shocking. So talked to my wife and said, "Yeah, apparently I need a bachelor's degree. So I should do that."
I got shamed today.
Yeah, right. Which was a good thing. It was a good kind of kick in the pants. And so I literally, while recovering from back surgery, laying on my back with a brace on, I'm enrolling in online classes and doing everything I had to do to get transferred up to NAU. I transferred to Northern Arizona and got my bachelor's degree in public administration and emergency management. And that was enlightening because at that point in my age and career, I thought I had pretty much everything figured out. Right. So I figured out I didn't. At that point in where I was, I didn't know what I didn't know. Sure. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn more. And I also learned that in the real world, a lot of people have, outside of the fire service, a lot of people have bachelor's degrees and don't have the luxuries that we have in the fire service as far as pay and benefits and security. So I quickly realized, man, if I need to exit, I probably need a master's degree, because that will get me to a certain level of stability and pay outside of the fire service that can protect my family.
Yeah.
And also internally in the fire service, a master's degree is kind of the expectation for senior chief officers. So knock it out. And so I did. I graduated in 2015 with a bachelor's degree, and I just went all in and did 30 credits across 1 year, and I graduated in 2016 with a master's degree. So it was a lot to do, but it was definitely worth it. So right around that time, still working and working on promoting and my career. And then I actually had just a fantastic conversation after I graduated with my master's degree with one of the senior folks at Glendale Community College where I teach there. And I finished the master's. I was very excited. And he has his doctorate. And he's like, so, are you going to do it? What do you think? And it's like, man, no, there's just
pretty happy.
Yeah. I just finished, the weight's off my shoulders.
Right.
And at the time I'm the director of firefighter fitness and conditioning there. So, pretty heavily involved in that program. And he's like, so, tell me why you don't want to do that now, at this point. And I said, well, I just got done with a master's degree. I'm going to take 5 years off. I want to, hang out with my kids and, go on vacations with the family and just do some other things. And in 5 years, I'll probably come back and do it. And he's like, so you're the fitness guy, right? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, so let's say you're in the best shape of your life. You've never been more fit. Would you stop working out, take 5 years off, and then go try out for the Olympics? I was like, no, that's pretty dumb. He's like, that's what you just said. You've never been more ready. You're in the zone. You're used to doing it. You need to go now. So I did. And 4.5 years later, I was done. So
yeah, well, that's the PhD is a pretty significant step, right? Yeah. Or Ed.D, whatever, whatever, all the same.
Yep.
Right. What was the biggest challenge for you in that process?
So timing, definitely. I had a phenomenal cohort of peers around me. We really supported each other. I made some just phenomenal friends. Doing that amount of work on top of my normal workload and managing the family, it was a challenge. So it just really required me to be very disciplined with my time, my schedule, and just not come off of that. So the first 2 years was coursework.
Right.
You're doing multiple classes a semester. Every summer we had to be on campus at Northern Arizona University. So it was kind of a nice built-in break. It's 120 down here in the valley and I'm going to Flagstaff. So we were up there for the weekends. And, but the first 2 years, like I said, is coursework. And then after that is, your dissertation, where you identify a topic, that you want to research and contribute to. And, that was in August of 2019 is when I started that process of identifying that research topic.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're familiar, but in the spring of 2020, there's this virus that hit.
I might have heard something about it.
Yeah. So writing a dissertation through a global pandemic was pretty tough when you're the planning chief for a fire department.
I could see there's some distractions there. Part of me would think, the world shuts down. What are you going to do? Sit at your computer and write?
Yeah. And so for a lot of my peers in my cohort, they were like, this is, I'm working from home. I'm getting so much done.
Right.
And I'm like, at the time I was a planning chief, division chief with the fire authority. And, we were working, every day, all day, just to make sure that we were doing everything we could for our people, our customers, trying to stay ahead of the research and everything that was going on. And the good thing is I had some really good mentors in my life at the time, and they were, they wouldn't let me stop or quit. So, sometimes there were weeks I didn't do anything, didn't do any reading or writing.
Yeah.
And then I'd get back in and get engaged.
What did you land on? What's your topic?
Yeah. So, my research topic is Arizona Chief Fire Officers' opinions regarding firefighter behavioral health problems, the causes and help approaches. So it's essentially what I did is I surveyed, my final number that I could use in the study was 110 chief officers across the state of Arizona. And we did a correlational study with their 4 career factors, and then I gave them a survey that categorized them into psychological subscales. So those 4 career factors were their level of education, their number of years in the fire service, their fire department's budget size, and their fire department's roster size. So those career factors, I was trying to measure if they impacted in any way, positive or negative, the chief officer's opinion of firefighter behavioral health problems, what causes them, and then what could effectively help them. So it was, it took a long time and a lot of research, and but the cool thing about it is we actually got like statistically significant results out of it. So we can replicate that study, elsewhere if need be. We can do it in specific agencies to help them understand their chief officers. A lot of people are researching the firefighters, right? The folks with, these circumstances.
Right. Well, and you would think that one of the triggers is I have to recognize I have a problem, right?
Yeah.
Me, the firefighter, and then I have to go get help.
Yeah.
But an administrator can facilitate those programs fiscally.
Yep.
And if they're just like, it's not a problem, well, you have a run where you're not going to get the services that the firefighters need necessarily.
You're nailing it, because so tragically in 2019 we had a firefighter suicide in my fire department, and I was a union trustee at the time. I was a captain. This is before I promoted to chief, and we did everything we could to take care of the family and the members in the moment, and try to just get through that process. And then we were left to figure out, okay, why did this happen, and how do we avoid it from happening again? And is that, possible? And this is in 2019. So, in the summer, and at the time, firefighter behavioral health was a thing. People were paying attention to it. Some departments were actually starting to implement programs. This is 4 years ago, but now it's a very different circumstance where we're all paying attention to it and aware and trying to do something about it. At the time in 2019, I was trying to figure out, why are we not doing something about this right now? Yeah. What is our plan? What is our goals? How are we going to make sure this doesn't happen again? And it took, in my opinion, longer than it should have. So I wanted to understand why. And at that fall, hey, you got to figure out what you want to research to become a doctor. Right. And it was like, it just all came together. Like, I need my degree is in educational leadership. So rather than I'm not a psychologist, rather than try to study the causes of the firefighters' behavioral health problems, which we can get into, but And there's a lot of really great research around that.
I feel like that's pretty well documented, though.
Yeah, there's a lot
well
of work happening about that. But for me, I was really frustrated. Why do some chiefs make this such a priority and dedicate so much time and energy and funding to it, and some don't? Right. Is it intentional? Is it not? What are the factors that impact this?
Well, so I want to know what the results were. What's your basic findings?
So I had 3 statistically significant findings, and then a fourth that I just like to call out. But the first one is that the more firefighters a fire department has, the bigger of the agency, right? So the bigger the roster size, those chief officers fell into the cognitive psychological subscale. And what that means is that cognitive psychology means that you manage things or stress or circumstances in an algorithmic way that's based off of stimulus. So a lot like a computer, it's very algorithmic. If this, then that. So it was interesting that the bigger the department gets, the more almost robotic or algorithmic chief officers are making decisions around firefighter behavioral health. And anecdotally, I call out that it's really hard to know your people when you have 2,000 firefighters.
Right.
And I had chief officers from, departments with less than 10 firefighters all the way up to the city of Phoenix, right? The city, we had a really great cross-section of the state for chief officers. So it was statistically significant that the bigger the fire department, the more algorithmic these chief officers make decisions around this topic, firefighter behavioral health, both the causes and what they think could help them. So the takeaway there is you need to put in effort to not lose those personal connections as your departments grow, or if you're part of a large agency, you're going to have to put in more effort to make those personal connections. The second statistically significant finding was that the more years of service, the longer a chief officer had been on, they fell into the organic psychological subscale. And the thing that's unique about that is that organic psychology describes the subject, or in this case, the firefighter, as an organism, and they can be impacted by internal and external, variables that change their psychology. And one of them is trauma. And some of this has to do with maybe the chemical imbalances in the body, which a lot of the times firefighters are doing to themselves, right? Whether it's sleep disruption, substance abuse, poor coping mechanisms, those all have chemical consequences on the body. So the one thing that really just stood out to me was there's an assumption by some people that chiefs, the old salty chief officers are kind of like suck it up, buttercup. Like, we've been there, you got to do it. And that's not what I'm finding, right? It actually is the opposite. They understand the longer they've been on, they fall into this organic psychology category where they're understanding that some of these external variables and internal chemical imbalances can be causing these behavioral health problems. So it's almost more like, I've been there, I know what you're going through. They're associating themselves to the issue. And then the third and the most significant, most powerful correlation that we found was chief officers that have a higher level of education, and it was a progressive attribution. So the more the education, the more powerful this connection was, that they moved away from the social and economic psychological subscale, which is a lay theory. Lay theory meaning it's not really founded in science or evidence-based. I'm not a psychologist, so any opinion I have, it's just a lay opinion. I'm not basing it off of, research. So these chief officers that are basing their opinion around firefighter behavioral health problems in this lay category are the least educated. And as education goes up, they actually move away from that, which is, you would assume kind of an obvious thing, but we can show it statistically that education has an impact on how chief officers make decisions, especially around this topic. So the higher the level of education, the more logical and analytical their decisions will become. And then the fourth that had zero connection, that fourth career factor that had zero connection to anything was fire department budget. So I call that out because usually the first thing I hear from a lot of chief officers around firefighter behavioral health,
we don't have the money.
Yeah, we just can't afford it. Yeah. We just can't do it. And so I'm like, well, that's interesting that you're the anomaly because in my research, that doesn't impact the circumstance. Now, don't get me wrong. Well, budgets impact. So you can say, there's
but
limited money.
Budgets are about prioritization.
Bingo.
And when we determine what's important to us as an organization, you build your budget around that.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand it, if you don't have the education, if you don't have the seniority and the empathy, right? And then your only line is, well, I don't got the money for that.
Yeah. So how I drew all this together is I couldn't land on a theoretical model. So I actually took 3 foundational theories, and created my own theoretical model. So I took lay theory to evaluate folks that are not practitioners or clinicians. Social cognitive theory, it says your experiences have an impact on your opinion. And then attribution theory, which means that you come up with these opinions of other people. You attribute their circumstance in your mind. So created I call it the LSCAT model, and it's actually I've used it in a few other situations and articles, and it really applies to our folks and leaders in the fire service making decisions, and not just in the fire service, but really any leader managing people.
Yeah. Oh, that's super cool, man. I was going to ask you what keeps you up at night, but now I know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said earlier, there's this, people say the fire service is more than a job, right? It's a calling, but it really is. And it's bigger than just, you can have it just be your source of income, but it is so much deeper than that. And if you are willing to go to that level with the fire service, it's incredible what the relationships you can create and have. And like I said, the fire service is a family to me. So that's what keeps me up at night, is making sure that we're doing what we need to do for our people so that they can take care of our customers.
Yeah, that's great. It was funny for me. I had a young firefighter ask me one day, like, do you miss being on the rig? Do you miss, connecting with the customers and, whatever? And I was like, there's some days when, I just want to throw my gear on and run in and kick doors and drag hose. But I also recognize that I get to serve the customer vicariously through all these different people. Yeah. And so, you need somebody who cares, who's willing to provide support services, who's willing to provide the planning and development, who's willing to provide, support in the alarm room, so that you on the front line, can get the work done that needs to be done.
Yep.
And, and I even think that you need those people who are interested in doing research, who are working for UL, who are doing that kind of, other work to contribute to the body of knowledge. I remember when I first found out about fire dynamics, and I realized that FDNY and LA City had been doing this research for 10 years before I saw it.
Right.
And I'm like, daggone it, where the hell were we 10 years ago?
Right.
Right. And that, there's people that come before us and they do this work, and our job is to just continue to drive it forward and pick it up and say, okay, what do we know now, and what are we missing, and just keep on going forward. And if you want to be a backseat firefighter and that's all you want to do, that's awesome. We need those guys.
Absolutely.
You need that senior, seasoned veteran in the backseat. But you also need those folks who are willing to go out and do this other work.
Right.
To contribute to the entire ecosystem.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting too, because we do ourselves a disservice. I call it my imposter syndrome. I'm multiple times in a doctoral program, I'd talk in class and I'd be like, well, I'm just the firefighter in the room. And people would always be like, stop saying that. And, but we do that. Almost, I think, more as a guarding mechanism.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm working with a guy who's finishing his dissertation right now. He's a retired chief. And he told me, he's like, I've actually found research that shows that firefighters are at least one standard deviation more intelligent than the general population. And I went, I know that, right? Like, 'cause it's amazing how the firefighters, they can operate so well under so much stress and not bat an eye, and also then go back to the fire station and look up, statute or medical documents, and they do their own research. And, one thing when I talk about wanting to professionalize the profession and how important the formal higher education really is it does, you don't have to have it, but it really does do a lot for our industry. And in my position, it's opened doors and given me opportunities to do other things to continue to advance our industry and improve what we do.
Right. Oh, that's great, man. Well, so let's talk about that for a second. So you went down this path. Now you're a deputy chief and you're a doctor. What are you, what doors has that opened for you along the way?
So I got to address something first. The first 6 months that I had my doctorate, every single time people would come up and be like, so is it Dr. Chief or Chief Doctor? And it was that ongoing joke. And I said, well, Chief Doctor sounds like the head of surgery, and that is not me. You don't want that. And I said, so it's Dr. Chief, right? And so as that kind of went on as a joke, I started getting into more speaking, right? So that's one of the opportunities that opened up. But I was working with a mentor in this public speaking world, and I was kind of telling her my story, and she's like, so people call you Dr. Chief? I'm like, well, not seriously. She's like, no, that's it. You got to own that. And so I've owned it. It's interesting.
That's your Instagram and social media handle?
Yeah, it's Dr. Chief Nixon. And so I've had people come to me and they're like, hey bro, that's kind of, arrogant. I'm like, it's a joke. It's not, but it's cool. It's something that you work hard for and you get. And like I said, it has opened some doors, and people who wouldn't normally look to the fire service for, just because they're not aware, they don't know what we do and what our capabilities really are. They're like, oh wow, you have a doctorate and you're a chief, and what does that mean in the fire service, and what does that mean, right, to what you do? So it started some really good conversations and allowed me to jump into other avenues. So I teach, I speak, I travel around Arizona and the region, even the United States, and talk about ethics, leadership, and wellness. So I've taught ethics in the fire service for years. My degree's in leadership. It's something I really nerd out on and just really focus a lot of time and energy in, because leadership is just motivating and influencing people, and you can be really bad at it, right? We have some folks that in any leadership role where it's like that's you're managing and not well, right? There's a difference between leadership and management. And
I like to think that leadership is we all There's different ways that we look at this, right? I think a lot of folks will be like, "Oh, I am the organizational leader. I'm in position, so therefore I am the leader." But it's much more deliberate than that.
Yes.
Or it needs to be more deliberate than that. And I hear people say that, "Well, I'm a servant leader." And I go, "Stop. Unpack that for a minute.
Buzzword.
What do you think that means?"
Yeah, right.
And when you ask, in all these processes, we ask people to label their leadership style.
Sure.
And I'm like, leadership is much more, and this is the world according to Rain.
Okay.
Leadership is way more complex than that. My job is to be flexible and to provide the leadership that you need.
Yeah.
Right? That Bob needs, that Sally needs, that Jim needs, whatever. It's to see you where you are and figure out what support you need, what education, what connection, what relationship you need to be successful, and then to foster that and to lead you.
Yeah,
right.
That's perfect. That's adaptive leadership.
It does have a name.
It does have a name. Yes, it does, and that's perfect because every person you interact with has their own set of needs, and I say this a lot. Leadership is an action word. It's a verb.
Yeah.
Because when you're leading people, you're getting a group of folks together to understand your expectations and the mission and the vision, and then move. I mean, you can get everybody in a circle and talk about stuff, but that's not how it works in our world. Even in business and any leadership, it's about influencing people to do things, to move, and hopefully in the direction you need them to go. So, yeah, meeting everyone's needs on the team, on the crew, is a part of that. And I'm going to dive into something real quick because this I talk about this a lot. That what you're talking about is leadership at its core, which is based in trust. Mm-hmm. So Stephen Covey wrote a book, The Speed of Trust. It's phenomenal. I love that book. But he breaks down trust in different ways that people will act, they will support you if they trust you. So that's the speed that your business will work in, your fire department, that you will move very quickly if there's high levels of trust.
Yes.
And you can go through a lot of really hard things very easily if there's high levels of trust. And the opposite's true. You will struggle very much if you don't have high levels of trust. So when I talk about trust, I break it into 3 tiers. Trust is based on relationships. And you have to have these mutual relationships that are respected, and then how you get there is through care. You have to care first about yourself and then about your people. And that creates this respect that you can build relationships around, and then those relationships turn into that trust. But without respect, you can't trust. Mm-hmm. And without care, you will not respect. So it all boils down to care. Like what you just described is listening to your people, identifying what their needs are, and then helping them meet those needs. Not doing it for them, but with them, right?
Right.
So,
so in the fire service, we all work in what are termed high reliability work groups, right? And what that means is that if somebody doesn't do their part of the job,
right,
somebody gets hurt, killed, or injured, right? It's problematic. You all have to do your part. And we see these in surgical teams, right? Where if the doctor doesn't do his part, or the med tech doesn't do their part, a sponge gets left inside someone's guts, right? Like you have to do your part. Flight crews,
crew resource management,
et cetera, right?
Yep.
So in our biz, that same thing, the reason why it's so important that we are connected, that we build trust. And part of our weird cultural stuff that we do, right? Hey, booter can't sit in the strato until they've come off probation, because they're earning their way into the clutch, right? And until I had a captain who didn't talk to me until we had it, like when I was a booter.
Yeah.
didn't say a word to me for like the first month until we had our first blow and fire together.
Okay.
And then he walks out, puts his arm around my shoulder. Now, I don't condone that behavior. I think it's poor, but I understand what he was doing, which was my senior firefighter is going to take care of you.
Sure.
And I won't let you into my circle of trust until you earn your way in.
Gotcha.
Now, I think there's more appropriate ways to do that. I think you leverage training.
Yeah.
You leverage time around the kitchen table. You go out and you do activity, you PT together, you cook together.
Sure.
You do activities to build connection and to create trust. But that is foundational to the function.
Yeah.
High functioning work groups have high levels of trust, which speaks right to what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And for me and what I tried to convey is that, again, it's in that 1 month period of time, I'm sure that you were constantly wondering what you weren't doing correctly, what were those expectations, and does this guy care about me or not, right? And I'm not saying or advocating for the take a plug, get a hug kind of world, but you
that needs to be a t-shirt.
Yeah,
bro.
well, and I didn't coin that. That's out there for sure. But what I'm saying is you have to communicate, you have to listen, you have to, if you want to get something good out of your people, you have to kind of put something out there too.
Right.
And sometimes you got to, as a leader, you got to do it first. And, it sounds like, the situation you were in definitely had its own dynamic, and the senior firefighter was doing that, was fulfilling that role and giving you that attention and that care and that, what you needed.
Right.
So that then the company officer would go, this is working.
You mentioned the take a plug, get a hug. Like, there doesn't need, and I know that's this idea that we need to be hard on folks. We need to cultivate a hardcore attitude.
Yeah.
However, and I do appreciate like this idea that every single thing you do, you get rewarded. Here's a cookie. I get it. I get it. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But investing in people is not the same thing. You show your care. You show that young firefighter that you care by taking them out and training them.
Absolutely.
And saying, I want you to be a good firefighter.
Sure.
So come walk the truck with me. You're gonna invest time in them.
Yep.
You don't have to put your arm around their shoulder.
No.
You just have to invest in them.
Right.
Now they know you care.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be like this weird thing where it's an awkward, deep conversation at the beginning of every shift. No, but it can be a lot of things. And, dedicating and being disciplined with the schedule and the time of taking care of each other, with PT and, like you said, training. Right. And one thing that I talk about, is you have to care for yourself first so that you can then care for other people, right? Mm-hmm. And that is so important in our industry, because you and I are the product of who came before us, right? The people in the next generation of the fire service, they're watching, they're learning. So if we don't make the important things a priority and we're not disciplined with our time, they're learning. So when we're here talking about wellness and behavioral health and all of the things that we're exposed to, whether it's cardiac or cancer or just our behavioral health and mental health, they're watching. So we have to make these things a priority. We actually have to do these things and improve our own health and be aware and paying attention so that then they do. So, it's a different fire service, but it's generational, and this isn't new to us, right? We've been doing this for hundreds of years, and every generation says, "Oh, this next generation is going to screw it all up," and that's not the case. We're doing great, and I think that I'm excited for the future and for that next group of people coming up, because they are absorbing information in a different way. They're they find value in different things, and it's going to be better for the fire service as a whole.
Well, before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about the challenges that the fire service is experiencing with recruitment and retention.
Yeah.
And so what's your perspective on what we do with that?
Yeah, that's I'm not going to be able to solve that.
I know I'm asking a really heavy. That's a loaded question.
That is the problem. I think one of the the biggest issues that we're dealing with right now in the fire service and just public safety in general. It's tough. I will say this, that the last several months ago, we did a new hire orientation. We hired probably 12 folks, and we were discussing why these folks were attracted to the fire service.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what got them interested?
Yeah.
So we went around the room and asked that question, and almost every single one of them said, I played sports, or I didn't play sports. I want to be part of a team. Almost every answer in some way or another was that these folks wanted to be a part of something that was bigger than them. Mm. And we have to connect with that. Our generation, or the generation before us, was you had a lot of trade workers that were coming in, and they knew building construction. They knew that hard work. They knew how to do, that mechanical aptitude was just next level. And that's still what we're getting to some extent. But a lot of the younger firefighters that are coming in now, they haven't had that opportunity for that work experience yet. And that we shouldn't hold that against them. If we're not happy with, the folks not knowing how to start a chainsaw, we can't condemn them.
Right.
We need to show them how to start a chainsaw, right? So,
right. Somebody taught me how to flood start a saw at some point in my life.
Sure. Yeah.
I didn't show up on the job,
Yeah.
Just having all these skills,
exactly,
in my head.
So we need to pay attention to that,
Mm-hmm.
and not, like I said, condemn our people, eat our young before they even have a chance to be successful.
Right.
So,
right.
So I think when we're talking about recruitment, we really need to get out there and see, because there's a lot of really great candidates that are out there. We just need to get to them, because what was appealing about the fire service, 20 years ago, is different today. Mm-hmm. So we need to figure out how to get those folks. And really, I think it's a matter of just getting out, having those conversations, and conveying to all of the future candidates why we love it so much. Like, tell our story.
Right. Well, you're absolutely right. I think that there's a lot of, I just read a paper recently that from the National Fire Academy. Mm-hmm. I can't remember. I believe the author's name was Heather Marquise, and I'm probably butchering her last name. Anyways, she did a great paper talking about women in the fire service.
Yeah.
And, we've had, 50 years of kind of women in the career service.
Yeah.
And yet our percentage of women in the fire service is like below 5%.
Yes.
And so you go, man, what is it about this job, right, that women don't find appealing, right? Is it because women aren't showing up, or are there barriers to the entry?
Yeah.
Are there barriers to in the structure? Yeah. And I think, when I first came on the job, I worked out in Sun City West, and we had at Station 101, we had an open bay, or open
bunk room,
open bunk room.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. That's it. And I look back and go, okay, there's an example of how that is not a comfortable environment for everybody.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And so it's things like that are structural, that women look across the thing and they go, that job's not that attractive to me. Right. Because of that. Now, if we all agree, hey, we want diversity of our workforce, we want to include more people.
Sure.
We really have to step outside of our current little paradigm and say, what is preventing these people from showing up here? Yeah. Right. We've done some things with the CPAT to we've institutionalized the CPAT to try to validate the assessment. We, some, brand new fire stations having more inclusive environments, single-use bathrooms, that type of stuff where you're creating space where everybody can feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
We need to destigmatize some of the things like pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And maternity leave, paternity leave, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So there's lots of things that we can do that changes this. But I think about the we're in a position, you and I, and our peers, and in this generation of firefighters, to start making changes in our culture that are healthy for the communities that we serve. Right? I believe that it's good for the communities we serve to have a diverse group of firefighters.
Yes.
Who serve their community.
Absolutely.
You know, and I was talking to a gentleman who's a Sedona fire chief, and he was like, if we had representation from our community, it'd be a bunch of rich old white folks. And I'm like, right. I get it.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily your community.
Right. But society.
Yes.
Right.
Larger, bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So
yeah, I totally agree. And that is one of our biggest strengths in the fire service is our diversity. Because if you had a 4 or 6 person crew of Kane Nixons, nothing would get done. We'd just sit around and talk about stuff all day long, right? Like we should research this, or we'd just spend too much time, working out,
theorizing.
Yeah, and that's one of our biggest strengths is that you can get 4, 6, 8 people under one roof with a common mission from completely different backgrounds.
Yep.
But we appreciate each other, we respect each other, and we understand the mission that is customer service and holding ourselves to the highest level of excellence that we can. That should be the expectation to execute that mission. Yeah. And, but yeah, if you just have a single prototype of a firefighter, it's just you're just not going to accomplish that goal very well. And the customers are going to suffer.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll give you a funny example of that. It's a silly example, but I was captain on Engine 12, and I won't say any names, but we had a little fire in the backyard, barbecue fire, and my crew blew through a fence, took out multiple planks to get a hose line to the back and put this little barbecue out.
Yeah.
So we did some destruction. So afterwards I go, hey, let's run to Home Depot.
Yeah.
Let's get some stuff to fix this fence. Well, one of my firefighters is a carpenter. Mm-hmm. He was like, I got it.
Yeah.
And so we pooled our $20 together.
Sure.
And we bought a plank and some screws, and he fixed that fence up like it had never been broken.
Right.
And that was we were able to provide that service because one of the guys on our crew had that capacity.
Absolutely.
And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's just a tiny little example, but that transcends. I've seen customers where a woman comes in on the crew, mm-hmm. and the customer's like, oh, I feel at ease because I can talk to a woman to woman.
Sure.
Right. And that diversity adds value. So there's so many different examples we could point to, but it really does strengthen our capacity.
Yeah. Well, and we're all dealing with what we're dealing with too. So we're going to have bad days. Mm-hmm. And that's the other good thing about having a diverse group of people working together that they care for each other is that if I'm having a bad day, I know somebody's going to step in on that patient interview if I'm not able to do it very well.
Yep.
There's just so much strength in what we can offer with a diverse group of people.
Yeah. Hey, so I want to circle back on one thing you mentioned earlier. You said you lecture on ethics, mm-hmm. and I want to touch on that for a minute. So when you think about ethics in the fire service, what's the thrust of what comes to your mind?
Yeah. So what I give talks on is about ethical decision making and what is the process of poor decision making. And how do we get there, right? And I always draw on like the headline test. Mm. We Chief Greg Reese from Tempe, he taught my first fire service ethics class a long time ago, and now I get to kind of carry that torch and do it. But if you just Google firefighter arrested right now, it's not like you're going to get something from 4 years ago. You will, but you know how Google says like in 0.2789 seconds, we found, 12,000 results. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of really just stupid, bad decisions getting made by people who have the public trust and are compromising our public's trust for their own gratification. And how they get there is what I talk about. So the normalization of deviance essentially is what I get into. So, and also that, actions don't just start. Everything starts with a thought in your mind. Thoughts turn into words, words turn into actions, actions turn into habits. And those habits become your character, and you're essentially your legacy, what you're known as, that one bad thought or one poor decision then evolves into more and more and more. Because I say this a lot, talking with company officers and chief officers, if you permit it, you promote it, right? What you allow to happen in your presence and not address, if it's, a bad thing, you just now lowered the bar.
Yeah. I always say if you condone it, you own it.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. I mean, you should. You will.
Yeah.
You will
100%.
own it. Yeah. And so don't tolerate it. Don't allow it. Again, I was talking about the standard of excellence. We should have a high standard or expectation of ourselves and our peers, our people, because of that public trust. So what I really focus on and talk about is the process of making good decisions and how some people make bad decisions, and how we just need to be more aware, because sometimes those little things, if we opt not to nip it in the bud, it will evolve or devolve into worse decisions, and it has consequences on our folks, and then on our departments and on our communities. So the conversation around ethics is what I give is more around decision making. So
I love that. Well, I think oftentimes about every level in the organization, and firefighters are like, well, I'm not in charge. I'm not the boss, but you have the ability to lead from where you are.
Totally.
And that leadership can be as simple as, I will follow good ethical decision making.
Yes.
I'm going to follow the golden rule, right? Or whatever however you want to label it, but I will do the right thing regardless of whether anyone's looking, and whether I'm the boss or not.
Right.
I will set an example and be on the right track. Yeah. And I think that's people need to remember that and be reminded of that, frequently. Well, hey, let me ask you some rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
We'll pull it to a close. What's something you believe that other people think is crazy or ridiculous?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. Can we come back to that one?
Okay.
That's not rapid fire, but that's a deep one. What do I believe that other people think is ridiculous?
Yeah. Take your time. I'll edit the silence down.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate that. Oh boy. A lot of the times people say, that I take things too personally in the fire service, and I do. And a lot of people are like, Kane, like, this is not that big of a deal. I'm like, no, it's a big deal, because this has, far-reaching consequences. And like I said earlier, this fire service is I take a lot of ownership in it. I say, this is my fire service all the time. Like, don't mess it up, right? We need to take things personally sometimes because of the outcomes that could be if we don't take things seriously. So sometimes people accuse me of taking things too personally. That might not be the best answer, but that's something that I definitely, people are like, oh, dude, like, you're nuts. Just, it isn't that big of a deal. I'm like, no, this could be a big deal. We need to pay attention. So
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. What's one horrible piece of advice that you've heard given?
Take a break. I've had a lot of people tell me man, when are you going to slow down? Like, when are you going to, like, just take a break? And that, for my story earlier about me not getting a doctorate or not going after it right away. I had people telling me that, like, oh, dude, you need to take a break. And it was like, well, that is an option, but as long as I'm managing myself and my self-care, and I'm at a good place, and my family, is supporting me, I'm going to do everything I possibly can as fast and as, do as much as you can. So, I've had people tell me to slow down And I disagree with that philosophy.
That makes them comfortable.
Yeah, well, right? It does. And so when I was testing, I was a 3-year firefighter with my agency. I had other experience outside of the state, right? And I had like 3.5 years on, and the opportunity to test for engineer came up. And I'm like, oh, I'm in. Like, I want to do this. And I had a senior firefighter come to me, and he's like, hey, man, you need to wait your turn and slow down. You know, you don't know everything about firefighting yet. And I'm like, well, can you tell me when I'll know everything about firefighting? Right? Like, what does that look like? And do you know everything there is to know about firefighting? And if you do, will you tell me? Right? Help me. And really what it was is that person just didn't want competition. And I love competition. That's not an arrogant statement. I just love to compete because I'm making myself better. So, yeah, that was bad advice.
So what's the converse? What's the best advice you've ever received?
The converse, I would say, is don't do everything you want to do. Tackle everything that you want to tackle. If that means taking a year off to spend time with your family and focus on yourself and focus on your career, then do that. But I guess ultimately what it comes down to is just you need to know who you are and what you need, and then do that. If you need a break, then you need a break, you need to take a break. If you know you can tackle a master's degree in 1 year, then go get it. I've had really great people in my life and very supportive people, and they've always encouraged me to tackle whatever I wanted to go after. And that's that advice. Believe in yourself that you can knock out whatever you want to knock out.
Right on. So this podcast is called the Fireground Fitness Podcast.
Yes.
So what does it mean to you to be fireground fit?
Yeah. So, I love that question because I say this, to folks quite a bit. Cause I teach at Glendale Community College, and I teach at NAU also, but, in the fitness world at GCC, whether I'm talking to firefighters that are on the job or those that want the job, I always say, would you want you rescuing you? And that's kind of a gut check question. It should be. If you saw yourself getting off the truck to come help you or your family, would you be content and at ease, or would you be concerned? And really, that's what it comes down to. We exist in this role to provide services to our customers, to the public, and the expectation is that we do it well. And part of that is preparation in our fitness, and not just our physical fitness, but our mental fitness, our spiritual fitness. I talk a lot about financial fitness. The components of wellness to me are your mind, your body, your spirit, and your environment. And you need to have fitness in all of them and be ready to act in each one of those areas.
I love it. Right on. Well, Dr. Chief Kane Nixon, brother, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, man.
Hey folks, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are digging this podcast, get on over to whatever platform it is you like listening to podcasts on and subscribe. This podcast will drop in the middle of the night. And further, if you're digging the podcast, get on over to Apple Podcasts, rate and review the podcast. That draws other people in. It also shares feedback, etc. Now, take the lessons you've learned here today. Go on out, figure out how you can pull them into your life and operationalize them. And more importantly, just go on out there and get some.